From a flightless simulator at Ferris Air to a momentous meeting in an alley, to the complex mind of an architect, to every far sector in space, and to the brilliance of the central power battery on Oa. This is the podcast that covers the adventures of all of your favorite ring slingers. This is the Emerald Echo with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to another episode of the Emerald Echo podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam. And with me, as always, is the Emerald Enthusiast himself, Donnie. Donnie, how's it going?
What's up, ring slingers? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, the podcasting machine, the big nerd in green. It's the Emerald Enthusiast, and we're back with another episode of the Emerald Echo.
And as the viewers that are watching on YouTube can see, we have a special guest, so I'll let Donnie take over and do one of his patented introductions. So, Donnie, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all beings of the Omniverse, please welcome to the Emerald Echo, legendary writer whose credits include The Flash, Green Lantern the Animated Series, and Supernatural. But you know him as the current writer of Green Lantern. He is Jeremy, the Galvanizer Adam.
So glad to be here. I'm excited.
We're happy to have you, and Donnie gives those wrestling style introductions to every guest we have. So
you don't understand. I've been, my friend Tim Sheridan and I were talking about panels at cons, and I said we got to change things up. We should all have our own entrance music. We should start interactions with people. I would love to get a breakaway chair and smash it on Mitch Gerrard's or something like that. I was like, we really gotta amp up the drama of these things,
I just want to see.
I've been saying, go ahead, Adam.
But I just want to see Tom King and Tom Taylor have a wrestling match.
Totally.
Who's the Tom? Who has the title?
Tom, who gets to wear the title of Tom?
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to be the king, you got to take out the king. It's like, I have above. So I don't know if you read that issue of Flash that I did where I had intergalactic space wrestlers.
Yeah, yes.
So I had a custom belt made. Did you ever see the promo we cut? No one saw it. So we cut a promo.
Was that the one that was at a con?
We did it. We did a promo. It was in the garage of Warner Brothers, and I had a mullet on, and Jim Krieg was there, and we're doing this thing, and I'm like, anybody wants this belt, got to take, all this stuff. And we put it, I swear, 3 people saw it, and we thought, oh, this would be a great way to advertise the issue. And it's no one saw the video.
What's amazing is that when you wrote that stuff all the way back in Flash, because I'm such a wrestling fan and so is Donnie, I kept thinking to myself, man, I'd read an entire book of just these characters.
Me too. Me too.
Why aren't they doing it?
The last arc that I wanted to do was, it was going to have Omega Bandman in it quite a bit, but I've thought about it a lot. I would love to get a mini, a Wham.
Something, because I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah, the origin of Omega Bandman would just be.
I
love it.
Yeah,
that's why. I put him in, the backup with Guy Gardner and the Not Lobo. Kevin McGuire drew, and it was mainly also because I wanted to fill in the gap of how did Omega Bandman get on Mr. Terrific's ship? I was like, I'm such I've got to make sure that I'm answering all the questions.
That's a fair point, yeah.
And the fact that Guy Gardner was there just added to the. I'm like, if anybody's going to be here, he fits. He fits the.
I love Guy Gardner.
He fits the rotation. But since we mentioned the Green Lantern, we might as well get to some talking about your Green Lantern run. So first off, what were your first experiences, either as a fan or as a creator, with Green Lantern?
It had to be, way back in the day, I knew of them in Super Friends, obviously. It was and when you read any amount of comics, you just kind of know about them. I couldn't pinpoint the exact location. I do have the superpowers, you squeeze his leg and his hand goes up, and he also has the plastic lantern, which I was like, what is this? And because growing up, I never had a comic book store near me. You found what you found at a spinner rack, and that was like it.
Yes.
And, but when I really got into Green Lantern in terms of like, I knew who he was, I knew about Oa and stuff. But like when obviously a ton of people did, but when Jeff was writing the main series and Peter was writing GLC, I was deep in the weeds in that stuff. Even to the point when Jim Krieg got the job on Green Lantern the animated series, he was like, "Hey, do you have any Green Lantern books?" I'm like, "Bro, goosh, you know, like here's this one you have to read." So that, like, and of course, Green Lantern animated series was my first credit on television, but yeah, it was always in the background. It's sort of like the Flash for me too. It was like it was always in the background, and then I would read different little pieces, and then when I got the job to work on it, it was like, oh, you know, here's a huge download you have to do. Taking on Green Lantern was incredibly intimidating because when they had taken me off the Flash, in the same breath they said, "Hey, we want to give you Green Lantern," and I was so, you know, mopey about Flash. Well, I don't know, maybe. Like I was just like, well, I don't know. And
I can't see you being mopey.
I know, but I was so sad.
I was mopey when you got taken off the Flash. I'm like, who's going to do it now?
I know. I felt like it was a weird, and this isn't true, but being a writer is a weird, like up and down of feeling like you're not good enough, and then you'll get people praising you, and you'll be like, that's a lie, you know. There's a lot of like self-doubt. So when I got taken off the Flash, I was like, oh, this is it, I'm never going to do a comic again, bah. And then they said, but we want to give you Green Lantern. I was like, I don't know. And I like called Jeff Johns, and he was like, I go, they took me off the Flash, and he was like, what why would they do that, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, they want to give me Green Lantern. He's like, oh my gosh, like he was so excited. He's like, you're gonna do incredible. I'm like, well, Jeff Johns thinks I could do it, you know, like that was kind of my but
that's a pretty big vote of confidence. Yes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And he's very inspiring like that. He's such a nice guy. But it's a huge, because as much as, you know, the continuity in the DC universe is pretty shaky, and the Flash has a lot of weird continuity, but Green Lantern has a massive continuity. It's a massive mythology. It's a massive stuff that especially at the time, I wasn't as well versed in. So I had to figure out, how can I make this make sense in terms of the continuity that exists as much as I can. Also, you know, my editor, like after Jeff Thorne's run, was like, well, just write a sentence that says everything went back to normal. I was like, no, I'm a nerd. Like I have to explain things.
That's not enough.
Yes, exactly.
So like, and I thought Jeff Thorne left a lot of really cool threads that I was like, oh, I can use these to tell an interesting story with the United Planets and the Source Lantern and some of the other stuff going on. I thought, oh, this could be a really cool platform to tell a story. And ironically, what was strange was when they said, I'm rambling, by the way, so you'll have to cut me off.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
When they said, hey, we want to do something more Earth-centric, I was like, this is great, because when I first got hired at DC, or when I first came into DC, was during the whole 5G thing. And I kind of pitched this whole idea of, it was going to be John, Guy, and Hal on Earth, and they would basically have one ring, and they would have to like check in. They'd be like, okay, my shift's over. They would give it to blah, blah, blah. In my head, I thought, oh, that'd be cool, because like you would have a Hal book, a Guy book, a John book, and it would like every episode or issue would be a different runner. And then, but I had conceptually some of the ideas of quarantining Earth and stuff like that already in place, which was an easy lift. So when I said, hey, what if we quarantine Earth? I don't know if the quarantining Earth like went over that well with certain people, because I know that was like, oh yeah, sorry, 2814 is quarantined. So I think it handicaps some of the other writers sometimes. And I was like, sorry.
Well, it was relatable, I can tell you that much. It's like, oh,
well,
seriously, right?
This isn't unfamiliar.
Yeah,
it makes sense, especially in light of what we're seeing in Absolute Power right now.
Right. Yeah. And not only that, I've always said, oh man, there's so many human lanterns, and I was trying to figure out, how do we shed some light on this? Like make sense of it in a way that, why would there be this many on 2814? Why would there be this many Earth lanterns? And just try to that came into play with, what I say, like the Guardians think that humans are like the cockroaches of the universe, like they'll always survive. They're a little less controllable, and so having this like designated survivor lantern in the Earth, which originally I wanted to have not just Tom Kalamaku, but I wanted to have Floronic Man, but Floronic Man was being used somewhere else, so I wasn't allowed to use him. But I was kept thinking like, those two were part of the new Guardians in the Millennium series, and I thought, oh, that would be really cool, especially the Green Lantern wrapped up in the green, like all that stuff kind of vibe. So, sorry, rambling. Go.
No, that's awesome.
No, that's okay.
No, I saw Green Lantern a long time ago. That's the answer to your question.
Yeah. So long time. Yeah.
Well, since I mentioned absolute power, let's go ahead with this question. We've seen your Green Lantern title tie in with Night Terrors and now Absolute Power. Is it challenging or invigorating to fit your narrative into a larger crossover?
So here's the thing. I think Night Terrors was a little like, it was hard. It wasn't hard for me to tie it in, but it was inconvenient for my story. You know what I mean?
It had to be, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got to remember, and this is the way I think about comics in general. I am so happy to be here. I'm such a nerd for so long that has been desperate to write comic books. If they told me there was an event every 2 months, I'd be like, I can't wait. Like, but
yeah, my wallet doesn't like it, but I like it.
Yeah. But because I'm a fan, I always want to make the tie-ins. I mean, this, like, you've read a tie-in where you're like reading the series and you're like, this has nothing to do with this.
Oh yeah.
And it's so frustrating. Like, to me, a perfect tie-in is, it's still talking about your story, but it's also like pitching you on why you should read the other thing too, right? And so, but with Night Terrors, they had said to me, we're going to do this Night Terrors, you don't have to write it. And I was like, I just took over. I'm not going to let somebody else write it, And then in my head too, I was like, I wanted to do the fake out, because they were like, yeah, there's these creatures, or, this thing, and it preys on the fears of these creatures. And I'm like, Hal Jordan doesn't have any fear. Like, that was the gimmick. And I thought, oh, this will be really cool, because it'll be a kind of twisted way for me to retell Hal Jordan's origin. But at the same time, I love the idea that issue 1, on its own, it's really peculiar, because issue 1, you realize this thing's trying to grab a hold of, like, what does this guy fear? By the end, you have that, like, parallax, right? Which is, as my friend says, the first thing off the shelf. And then the second issue is him going like, you came to the wrong planet and the wrong dude. And it was just 22 pages of Hal Jordan chasing someone down to beat him up. And I was like, that's awesome, because that to me is Hal Jordan. It's like, oh no, you thought I was going to be scared. You made a terrible, terrible mistake, And I thought that was the cool part of it, because it was I imagine there were people that read that first one and they're like, ugh, parallax, they're probably like, this is so stupid. And then if they read the second one, they're probably like, yeah, okay, great. This makes sense.
No, I thought
it was brilliant. Because how many times have you had a nightmare where it's something where you're going from place to place and you're reliving some element of some past trauma? Right. I thought it made so much sense. Yes.
Right.
Like my initial reaction when they announced the whole Fear Terror tie-ins was, I'm like, he just started the run. Now we're going to pause for this, whatever this is. I'm like, why, especially the way you ended off the previous issue. I'm like, okay, but I want more of this, not whatever is going to happen over here. And then I'm like, all right, but I like this, so I'll like, not that I have any say, but I'm like, I'll allow it. I'm like, continue.
It is. I could probably be better about, like, because I think about it, it's like issue 1, 2, and then the end of 2 directly goes into Night Terrors. And the same thing with, like, I forget which Green Lantern it is. Maybe it's 14. And it's like, it goes directly into Task Force 7 issue 3,
which was also amazing,
which is like really important to figure out that, oh, Hal's in prison, the next issue. So I was like, maybe I could have done that. Hopefully when they collect it, it'll all be together, So but I enjoyed that too, because I like to try to find. They're like, hey, we've got these Amazo robots, and they absorb powers. And I was like, well, if he absorbs willpower, what if it gives him free will? And they're like, whoa. And I was like, cool. And then I started liking Jade Stone a little bit, and I liked this conversation. I'm like, maybe he'll just stick around for a bit, you know? So they seem to be, I'm really pumped because especially my editor, Paul Kaminsky, he seems to be up for a lot of this stuff. And I'm really grateful because that's not always the case on products that you don't own, which is always the kind of push and pull of like being a creator when you're writing something with characters you don't own. For me, I tend to get very invested in the characters. And then at some point somebody goes, yeah, but they're not yours. And I'm like, but aren't they? You know, like, you know.
But they have to feel like yours for a time, though.
Yeah, I think so. And but again, like I get really invested. Like with the Flash, I got really invested. I got invested in the kids specifically. And I remember Mark Waid saying when he got off the Flash, it took him a long time to read the Flash because it was just like having a weird divorce or something.
Yeah, it's like who's taking over who's taking my job, right?
And with answer your question about tie-ins though, I feel so like I've always tried. If you've seen any of my tie-ins, whether it was like War for Earth 3 or there was I think it was in Dark Crisis, I did a little mini with Linda and Iris getting the like weapons from the Hall of Justice. I'm like, if I can add to the characters in an organic way and also flesh them out dimensionally for the book, I feel like I'm succeeding. But I'm a huge nerd. Like I loved crossovers growing up. I mean, I don't like a lot of crossovers. I would love like maybe one a year, you know. But
there should be a break in between, you know, the big events. There seems to be one every few months. It's like, wait a minute. My wallet can't take this.
I know, I see that, but like if I think about it, I would be curious as a kid. Because I remember like Secret Wars was the big one for me when like I remember that hitting me, but then it quickly was like Fall of the Mutants, Inferno, you know, I was Armor Wars. I was collecting everything. I don't know where I got the money. Actually, I had a paper route. There's a terrible story. I won't tell you that. Anyways, next question.
You can tell us off the air.
Yeah. So initially, you had said you weren't sure where the Hal and Carol relationship was going to go and progress. But at what point did you realize that she was going to leave Nathan at the altar?
When I wrote the flashback with them as kids, and there's been variation, obviously. There's been versions where they only met as adults, and there's been versions where they knew each other as kids. And I like that. I guess in my head, I was like, I was looking for a lot of books that dealt with him as a kid, and there's not that many. It's kind of a weird gap in Hal Jordan's life that I'm like, ooh, this. And you're always looking for a gap, especially for a character who's been around for ages. Yeah. And as I was writing that, I just kept thinking like, the actual thing, the healthy thing would be for them probably to separate. But what kept pulling me back is the misnomer that what happens if you meet the person you're supposed to be with as a kid. And sometimes we all kind of get this way, especially with our family members. You tend to take them for granted. You know, like my brother and sister, when we're around each other, we're pretty much 13-year-olds, and we like know which buttons to push.
Oh yeah.
We're not treating each other like a stranger, you know. We're treating each other maybe a little harsh, but also we love each other a great deal. So I just kept thinking like, if these guys have known each other for a long time and they've been through some traumatic stuff and they do love each other, but it's like they're not exactly, because they've always been in each other's life in some form or another. They've taken each other for granted a little bit, and they go off and on. But to explore that in a human level, to have this conversation where Carol's just like, I realize, I mean, I'm taking from my own life too, because when I was dating, and I'm sure when people were dating me, they thought they could change me, and I thought I could change them. And having been married 15 years, you just begin to realize, no, it's not about changing somebody. It's just about acceptance. It's about just loving them where they are and who they are. And so, if we're talking about DC continuity, I always said Wally is the most well-adjusted character in all of DC Comics. And but like, I had that issue where Hal and Barry are having a conversation, and all the comics at the time were like, the spotlight was on legacy characters. Nightwing, the Titans, everything was like kind of like the forefront. There's no Justice League.
Are you talking about issue 4 from this run?
Yeah. And so at the end, Barry and Hal are having this conversation about, oh my gosh, our sidekicks are this and that and the other. And it's this kind of like, when do we grow up a little? And I think Hal's starting to make that change, because up until then he was pursuing. People were really like, oh, he's creepy. I'm like, is he? She's not married yet. Like, and maybe it's pursuing her in a fashion that makes somebody uncomfortable. But I like that he gets to an acceptance level that he's just like, I don't need to treat her like that. I don't need to chase her like that. I don't need to do any of that stuff. I can love her. And if she, loves me back, great. But if not, then that's on me, and so then her going through this, the Vegas issue where she remembers how, and she remembers why she likes this kid is because he is a risk taker. He does make her life more interesting. He is a hero and all this stuff. And it's also a part, and we'll get into it in more comic books to come, but I don't know if it was you or somebody said, like, what's the deal with Carol? Like, she's very competent in some of the previous runs as, the Queen of the Xamarons or as a Star Sapphire. But I talk about that and I don't, that will be explained in a way, because I do think she's making a transition, and my hope, and obviously the solicits tell you, I was on a call with Mark Waid and Paul, and we talked about, I said, I really want to make Carol a superhero that is like one of the heavy hitter women superheroes.
Okay.
Like, I don't want her to be just like a side note Green Lantern character that just, I want her to be whatever. And they said, well, what if she was in the League? And I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. So making her this character that is, I still think she needs face mask problems. Like I don't know if I'm in for the tiara or she needs the domino mask. Like better designer. I like the bodysuit thing that she has on right now, but like I need something. I don't know what. I need somebody. I need like Dan Mora to come in.
That's what I was going to say. He's the character design guru.
Yeah. I really had to laugh though when Hal was flying the drones and he called her Queen of the Xamarons, and I was like, he is on that woman's last nerve right now.
I remember when the series started, and you set up the whole thing with Nathan, and she's with him, and I said to Donnie, I'm like, this poor guy knows this is not going to last.
I know.
Once they're on the road trip to Vegas, I'm like, okay, it's over. They're not coming back from Vegas married. It's over.
Yeah. And what's funny about Nathan is like, I like to subvert people's expectation, because there was a lot of people that were just like, here's another character that they just created and they're going to make disappear. And that was never my intention, because I think all of us kind of was like, he's a nice guy. Like, he's a nice guy. And so
he was nice to Hal too.
Yeah. And
then he locked him in the washroom.
And I think of him a little bit like, you ever see that Michael Douglas movie, Falling Down?
Yes. That's a great one. Yeah.
And so there's this element of like, man, and in this day and age, especially, it's like you play by the rules, you do what you're supposed to do, you're doing the right thing always. And there's just a moment where it's like, things just break and things change. And we'll get into more of that.
Okay. Well, speaking of, and by the way, I'm glad that you didn't block me after I made that TikTok of Nathan at the altar.
Awesome. I was awesome.
Like, he's either going to think this is hilarious or he's going to be like a jerk.
No. I love stuff like that. Are you kidding me?
So we have to talk about this character now, and I am so excited because I have always said that since we had the emotional spectrum introduced, there needed to be a character who could wield heartbreak, despair, that kind of hot negative emotion that doesn't go away. And now we have Nathan Broom as the sorrow.
Right.
So tell me, how did you conceptualize this character? Like, when did it all fall into place that this is where I'm going to go with Nathan?
Okay, so the best way to describe it is that I've been trying to figure out Green Lantern in my head. Like I've been having fun and whatever. And after Sinestro, left, and I was just like, man, I should just start really. I don't know why I was being a little more reserved than maybe I usually am, and I wanted to just kind of unleash a little bit. And with Nathan, how do I describe this? The emotional spectrum's messed up. So it's like there are a lot of different emotions. And that falls in line with kind of the story that I'm telling and the story that's going to come the next year. So It's not just a one-off. It's more of things are really weird out there. And we're starting to see the results of that. Like the results are, Sinestro turned red. The results are that UP lanterns can somehow change their spectrum.
Right.
And
Kyle's going through a mental health crisis.
Kyle's going through a mental health crisis, exactly. And so because of that, there are stray energies and stuff that are abounding. And I wanted to do it, but I want to be very clear. Like I'm not doing it as a. It just makes sense in the overall story in my head. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not the. I'm not gonna. Oh man, I don't want to spoil it. Like I'm struggling to be like, okay, so what can I say? But I think we'll see. Part of the reason is because when I was doing the Flash, and I really obviously gravitated toward the kid characters, and I was trying to build up this kid kind of super team with like Mr. Terrific's son and Maxine and Irie and Jay. And I kept making like their own group of villains that were their own rogues gallery in a way. And so in a way, Nathan, to me, is a very mirror image of what Carol was to Hal when she first arrived as Star Sapphire. Like if you look at that origin story of Star Sapphire, you're like, oh, it's reductive, but like it's like, oh, she's really, loving it, and then she's like attacking Hal Jordan, and you're like, oh, that's weird. So this, in a way, this is the reverse of that. It's like, I loved you so much. Now I'm this thing that is giving Carol an antagonist, because I think in order for, whether or not this is true, but like in order for superheroes to survive and not just be something that you throw away, I think it's important to have their own villains and their own characters that they interact with.
Good point.
That are somewhat separate from what Hal has to interact with. So it's mostly to deal with, Nathan is mostly to deal with Carol in a way.
Okay.
All I know is that McFarlane better do the right thing. I need a figure.
How long was it going to? I was wondering, how long is he going to take for Donnie to work in a McFarlane reference? But one of the questions I have is when you're dealing with Green Lantern and all the constructs that he can create. In terms of the constructs, is that something that you write in and then give to Xermanico or whoever the artist may be on a particular issue? Or do you say, I need a construct here, figure something out, and like is it you giving the artist the detail, or is it kind of?
Most of the time I give the detail, but I always have a caveat that's like, but if you want to do something else, like 100% do something else. Most of the time I'm giving it, because I also don't like, my job is to, I feel like, make the artist excited about what he's drawing, and also don't leave him hanging. Like his time is too precious. So like him sitting there pondering, well, maybe this or maybe that. And that may not be the case for Xermanico. Like he's a genius. I just want, my feeling is always going, and I would do this in animation all the time too. I'd write out all the fight scenes and different things. And some people do that, some people don't. I like doing it. So I would do it, and I would also be like, But if you want to do something else, let me know, and we can do something else. And then it's also hard because you're dealing with, again, how many years of constructs.
Right.
And so immediately when I started on the book, I was trying to do stuff that was a little different, like, you know, Hal making fake ghosts in a graveyard, or
that was awesome.
You know, that kind of like subterfuge, and it is hard to come up with constructs. Like, I'm like, this is tough. But it's the challenge is fun too. And when you have somebody like Xermanico who can do anything, and that was something Jeff had said, because Xermanico had drawn Flashpoint Beyond, and Jeff had said, you just remember to give him room to breathe because his art's so cinematic and epic. And I keep that very conscious that I don't do. I always feel guilty if I go beyond 6 panels. Like I get like this little pain in the back of my head, like, oh gosh, you know. But if I can do a full page or double page spread or whatever, like, I'm doing it because I want to see what Xermanico's stuff looks like. Like the minute he was all Earthbound, and the minute we went to space, and I remember getting the arc back, and I was like, I'm an idiot. Like, why did we have this on Earth? Because his space stuff was so great. I was like kicking myself, like, it's so good. And it's so good that I'm terrified they're going to steal him and put him on something else, you know?
Yeah, it's looking at his art, it takes me longer to read Green Lantern for the simple fact that I stop and just stare at a page, and then I'm like, oh, I have to finish reading it. I have to finish reading this book. I have to keep going. Because I even said to Donnie, when I think we reviewed, was reviewing one of the earlier ones where Hal was flying past various U.S. monuments. Yeah. And I'm like, you mentioned it being cinematic, and that's exactly what I said to Donnie. I'm like, this looks like a movie.
Yeah. The way he does it, the way he does characters, he can just do drama in a face. I'm just like, and then he'll do these big, beautiful, you know, Denis Villeneuve, whatever the guy who directed Dune's name is. I can never
Villeneuve,
it's like, oh my gosh, these like epic frames. And my favorite thing is I'll put something down, but I'm kind of like, you know, it'll be multiple panels, and he'll do this design of the panels in a way that's just like, oh my gosh. And I cannot praise him enough. I've been very lucky to work with some amazing people like Fernando Passarin or Alman K. Like, I've been working with some incredible. I'm very lucky because you and I both know that I can't tell you how many times people are like, oh, this is a great book. And I open it up and I'm like, ugh, the art looks terrible. Put down. Like, I don't care how good the story. If the art stinks, I'm not necessarily going to read it.
It's hard to get past really bad art. Yeah.
And by the way, and if it's really good art, it can be a bad story. Like I have read, you know, I mean, in my younger years when I was a young whatever, it was like, oh yeah, McFarlane's Spider-Man. I'm totally reading it for Spider-Man and not Mary Jane at all. Like, you know, it's like I have the entire collection of Danger Girl for.
I'm not the only one, Donnie. I'm not the only one. I feel all right now. I'm good.
But it's not that it was bad. I just don't remember the stories.
and it's funny because when Donnie and I do reviews, I always like to say, if we're, let's say, hypothetically taking a point off because the art wasn't our favorite.
Yeah.
I try not to criticize, and I'm not saying this happened on Green Lantern. It hasn't happened on Green Lantern, but if I'm criticizing the art, I do it in a way of establishing, look, I can't draw a stick figure. Right. So whoever's drawing is much better than anything I can do and whatever. It's just not my preferred art style. That's all it really comes down to, right? So
it's super subjective. But
so I try to be as polite as possible when I'm saying I don't like this. It's better than anybody that I know could do, but it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
So it's hard, but you're right about saying if the art doesn't look great in the book, it's like it could be every issue could be Mark Waid caliber and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
If it doesn't look great, it's like, well, what am I doing with this? Like,
I mean, that's
definitely not the case for this book. This
book,
between Sinestro and Hal, when Sinestro was using the Red Lantern ring, it was amazing.
I know. I agree. And again, it was one of those things where I just kept going like, I can't tell you how fun it is to get pages from him. and then to get it inked and lettered and colored is like, you know, Dave Sharp, all these people that we work with that are just, they're so much better at this than I am. And it's so much fun because I feel like it covers a multitude of sins. Like I'll just like, well, that maybe wasn't the best level of dialogue, but it's like he made the coolest thing. I'm like, oh, whatever, it looks great, you know.
And then even your task force issue recently, the third, I think it was the third one,
Marco,
right? With Marco Santucci, which we've had on the show a couple of times. He's so good
amazing.
as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. His is great. The Jay Garrick book that I did with Diego Orlatuga, who is doing the JSA with Jeff Lemire, his art was great. And it's just funny what you respond to as a consumer. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. Oh my gosh, I love this. And that was the funny thing about Fernando. Like when Fernando drew my first comic I ever did, and I just kept thinking like, why are they giving me such a good artist? And he was just weird that I would turn in a script and he would always plus it. So it was everything I had in my head, but it was way better. And then he hilariously will send, you know, sometimes I think he's just doing it sarcastically, but he's not. He's like, well, this isn't the best that I've done, and I'm sorry. And it's like without fail. And I'm looking at it like, shut up. This is amazing. This is so above and beyond. And every time like, if you look at the detail in the Absolute Power tie-ins, they're ridiculous. And, you know, Hal steals a bat plane next issue. And it's like, I said, this is what I want it to look like. And then he just annihilates it. He's like, yes, this. And I'm like, that's it, you know? So it's really cool.
And it's funny because you mentioned about, you know, the McFarlane Spider-Man and Mary Jane of it all. When I saw Marco Santucci's Carol, I'm like, all right, I'm not ashamed to admit this. She looks fantastic, and now we'll move on.
I know. And by the way, it's you know, it's everybody. I don't have abs like Hal Jordan. You know what I mean? So it's fan service for everyone.
Exactly. Everybody's getting exactly.
So we spoke a little bit about Kyle here. Now, can you shed some light, no pun intended, on Kyle's situation? Will that be resolved in your book eventually, or is that going to be someone else's story to tell?
No, it will be resolved. And also, you know, we all know that Kyle, and for those that don't know, Kyle is the chosen one. No, he is because of the White Lantern stuff and because of the specialness of Kyle, I just thought, oh man, and because this is a Hal-centered book, but I kept thinking like, man, because the emotional spectrum's so jacked up, there's only one guy I would think that is so force sensitive in a way that he's just like, he's messed up because of it. Because he has mastered all the emotional spectrum, you know, or at least the main ones that we know about. And so this is like really weird for him. And it just points to, obviously, Theros is trying to do stuff with this Source Lantern. They're experimenting on Kelly, the Teen Lantern. You can see that the UP Lanterns are, you know, Source Energy is like, you know, that's the old gods. That's the new god Kirby stuff. And after Jeff Thorne made this, you know, have John make this god bubble, you know, it was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I think it plays into me talking about the emotional spectrum as a whole. And what is this stuff? Are they like radio waves in the universe or like more like the Speed Force in a way, and using conduits to, you know, facilitate the emotional spectrum? And so I think Kyle is this guy that's like, he's getting a lot of signals, you know, he's this guy who's getting a lot of emotional, spectrum signals. And so that will, you know, basically what happens is the Absolute Power tie-ins end next month. So September. And then October, Philip Kennedy Johnson and I write this one shot, Green Lantern Civil Corps, which is, it is kind of like taking Philip's stuff from John Stewart, and then we're combining it. We've talked about this for a long time, like combining it into the main line of books as Philip goes off to do Batman and Robin. too much.
Which I'm also excited about.
Yeah, totally. Same here. And then we'll use those characters and some of those things in the Green Lantern book that will, after Green Lantern Civil War, I think it's 2 or 3 issues, and that's it. And that'll be like, that will kind of finish this arc. And then we'll have I want to say a new status quo in the universe that will set us up for the next year's worth of books.
This all sounds awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah, because that's going to be the jumping on. The All In stuff. The All In stuff is a great jumping on point.
Yeah,
for people that haven't read at this point. So if they haven't, that's
I think for Green Lantern, the jumping on point is really going to be January.
Okay.
Like, if you jump in October, you'll be like, wait, what? What's happening? Like,
okay.
Where's the battery? Who's Theros?
Just email Don. We'll give them Donnie's email, and he can just fill everybody in.
Fill them in. Yeah.
He can be the narrator. And do a whole.
Well, before we get to the last question, I got to tell you, I paid a pretty penny for all of the variants on issue number 1, all the chrome covers with the various
covers, man.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
I know.
You bought them all, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Of course, I did.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
I've got them all. I was stupid. I did not think that people were going to let me write comic books for this long. So I was like, you just don't imagine. Oh, my dream came true. They're going to let me do it for a while.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to keep an extra copy for each of my daughters. Like, they'll care. And so I started just like the stacks of stuff. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I just redid my comics. But yeah, those reflective color covers are awesome.
If you randomly see them on eBay, your daughters have.
Totally. That's fine. That's fine. It's your college money. No,
exactly. Well, there you go.
Your kids seem to care. Your kids seem to care in your unboxing videos. I've watched those all. They are hilarious.
Those are fun.
My youngest is a psychotic. She's hysterical. And
it's like Christmas every time they go to the mail. It's like,
yeah. I'm hoping my youngest. I wrote an issue of Flash with my oldest daughter back in the day. And ever since then, because she got paid, my youngest has been like, well, when's my turn? And I'm like, it's coming up. It's coming up. Her and I are going
to that's funny. That's awesome.
Green Lantern together, which will be fun.
Before we get to the final question, one thing, because when Philip Kennedy Johnson was on here, I asked him if there were any other DC characters he'd like to write, mainly because I wanted to throw in the suggestion of, I'd really want you to write Batman. I told Phil Kennedy Johnson, and now, not that I had anything to do with it.
You did it.
The folks at DC made the right call, in my opinion. But so, are there any other characters? You've written you're writing Green Lantern. You've written Flash. Yeah. It seems to me that you're slowly working your way through the core members of the Justice League. Like, is that something that you're hoping to do? Like, eventually you'll get to every member of the Justice League?
They don't give me any say in it.
Well, how about I just put that out there? Just at some point, give him every member of the Justice League.
Yeah.
By the way,
there is another book that that might be happening, which will be cool. Okay. And and of course I'm a nutty Batman guy, so obviously,
so Batman at some point,
that to me is the top of the hill. But I'm also Batman and ancillary Bat family characters. Martial artists. Like, I've done a lot of Batman stuff in animation. I did a movie with Bruce Timm called Batman Soul of the Dragon, and
which was a cool one. I enjoyed that one. The 70s aspect of it, that was cool.
Yeah, the martial arts. So, but I'm also like a Ted Cord Blue Beetle nut. There's a lot of characters that I want. Of course, you want to do Superman. Of course, you want to do. I'd love to do Captain. I'd love to do a team book. Honestly, I find that if you notice, my writing starts to get very team oriented. The further I go on, it's like,
so you're secretly angling for a team book.
I don't mean it. It's just
like, if Mark Wade needs to go on vacation for like a month or two,
I'm in. Mark, I'll do your inserts. I
don't know how the heck he's doing it, but he's got so many books coming up. It's ridiculous.
But it's like the golden age for him.
And the sad fact is, it's not sad. It's for me, it's not sad. For my wallet, it is. Yeah. I'm buying the book, so that's.
I know. I mean, I have some dream books I want to do, but they never fit into like I'm not at the level I'd be like, hey, give me this 6-issue miniseries. I'm like begging them. I have this dream project. I'm like, and I've begged them for ages. I tried to do it as a television show at one point, and I was like, give me this 6 issues, or I'd love to do more, but like it's in the DC universe. It won't bother anybody. And until I become a creator that is much more bankable, for lack of a better word, like my books sell fine, they're great, but like until I'm in, oh my gosh, he sells a lot, I don't have that power. I just keep but I do this a lot. I'm like my youngest daughter. I'm just poking them, going, you should let me do this. You should let me do this. You should let me do this. Like I'm sure they're annoyed.
Well, I tell you what, it's coming, because I have yet to hear anyone, and I'm on a lot of Green Lantern fan sites. I have yet to hear anyone say this book is bad.
Yeah,
everyone
honestly,
seems to be receiving this positively.
Like I'll let Donnie ask the last question eventually, but what I will say is, this run to me, so what you've done so far, has got me as excited as I was when I was reading the Jeff Johns run. And again, that's not taking away from anything. Like
no, I love what everybody else
has done, but it's like I have a system where my favorite book, like I'll do catch up on the weekend where I read all my books that I bought, on Wednesday. And my system is the best, my favorite books, my favorite 2 or 3 titles that I'm reading, I'll save to the last day. So on Sunday I'll read whatever. Green Lantern is always on that last day, because I'm like, I know this is going to be good, right? So I'm like,
that's so kind. That's so kind. I appreciate that.
So, and one quick thing before we get to that last question. Green Lantern number 14, it's on newsstands now. It's at your local comic shop. Also, Green Lantern Back in Action. This is the trade paperback. If you haven't been reading this series, first of all, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you reading the series? Secondly, this has Green Lantern 1 through 6, as well as the 2 issues of Night Terrors. And I believe there's at least 8 issues on DC Universe Infinite right now if you read digital comics. So,
well, I read mine digitally, but I get them through. I want to read everything. I just want to preface, I want to read everything physically. Unfortunately, I don't live in Wayne Manor, so I just I have to decide. Okay, half are going to go physical, half are going to go digital. But when I read digital, because I'm stubborn, I still go through my Amazon Kindle, just because when I want it that month, I have no patience.
I get that.
You're telling me number 8 is on DC Infinite? Yeah, I can't wait that long to get to 14. So I have no patience.
I listen, DC Infinite and Marvel Unlimited saved my life, because it's like there's no room in this where I am, and I get all these comps. So yeah, exactly. So, what's cool about the subscription service for me anyways is you can go off on these rabbit trails and find these really cool books you would not otherwise know. And I do that a lot. I would be like, oh, who is this writer that I hadn't heard of or whatever? And when I first heard of Tom King, I remember being like, I actually did that on Hoopla, which is like the library one.
Okay.
And I ended up just blowing through everything. Same with Invincible, like Kirkman's Invincible. I was just like, I was so late. I was like, there's like 100 issues that I can read, And so it's great, because you're like, oh, this is unlimited. And if I really like it, then that's when the problems arise, because then I'll go to a convention and I'll be like, there's a pristine copy talking to me from But what's happened lately is I blame Fernando on this. Fernando sent me some original art from the comics that I like, the first appearance of Gold Beetle and like all this stuff, and you get that in the mail, and that is a different type of heroin, because you're like sitting there going like,
I need more of these.
The artwork is like, this is bad, man. It's bad.
So, last question. Who is Jeremy Adams besides the famous writer? What are some of your hobbies and interests besides comics?
Husband, father. My hobbies are I play too much Fortnite with a bunch of adult nerds who we get smoked by kids with fast twitch muscles. I'm a huge martial art nerd. I've been doing martial arts for a long, long time.
Awesome.
Gosh, what else? I mean, that's the weird thing. So many of my hobbies are like my career now. So, between martial arts, it's mostly writing and reading. And, my daughter is always like, I need to have a responsible job, probably because she's seen me like a year without work, and she'd be like, oh, I need a steady paycheck. She was seeing me give notes on an animatic for this animated show that I'm heading up. And she goes, but I got to tell you, Dad, what you do looks really fun. And I'm like, it is, but are you willing to wait over 10 years for your first credit? Like, are you willing to kind of suffer through is the real question. And I'm hoping her answer is no, and she's an accountant, but that's just me.
Well, having you as a dad is kind of like having the money in the bank briefcase. Like, there's one opportunity.
Right. I mean, that's how there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I wish they would have something responsible for security. But my mom was always very much like, do what you love and follow your dreams type thing. And so becoming a writer, there was no second option. I moved out here from Arizona and kind of burned the ships, and I had no secondary plan. And I just kept thinking, I'm going to outlast everyone, like Survivor, I remember there was this thing about Rod Serling, who did Twilight Zone, and he's famous for being a writer.
Yeah.
And it said something like he had written 32 screenplays or something before any of them got sold. And I remember going, that's my goal. I'm going to write 32 screenplays. By the time I write 32 screenplays, something will break loose. And, I was 5 or 6 in when I got Green Lantern, the animated series. And, but, that's what I love to do. I really don't have the ability to do anything else, which is worrying to my wife, I'm sure.
So give him those Justice League all the Justice League characters, DC. That's
I know, yeah. Give me all
exactly for his wife's sanity. Give him all the Justice League characters.
Exactly.
But I'm just curious.
Honestly, there's so much about writing these characters for me that there's a certain amount of. I've said this before. I'm not a deconstructionist. I'm not somebody that's going to tear apart I can't do it. I'm not that good. So like, I'm not going to tear apart a character and give them like a coke habit or whatever. Like, it's that's not. Those aren't the comics that I really enjoyed. I like to take characters through pain or whatever, but I like them to stay their characters. Mm-hmm. Like I want Hal Jordan's going to be Hal Jordan, at least the version I think. He's not going to, it's same with Wally. He's going to be this heartfelt superhero, and we're going to go on adventures, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to do stuff. And some people can do the more serious stuff. I'll have serious moments, but like I definitely am just like, dude, I'm asking for your $5. That's a lot of money to ask for to me, for a couple minutes of time.
What I like about that's why your runs on Flash and now Green Lantern is you're definitely peppering in some new stuff that we haven't seen before, that's awesome. You don't just want to reread a story that I read 5 years ago,
right?
But by the same token, the characters are the characters that I'm familiar with, like the ones that there's a reason why I love these characters in this world, and it's there. And again, not to knock or belabor a point, but that's why for me the DCEU was so frustrating, was because this isn't what I want. Like, I don't want mopey Superman 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. I don't want Batman threatening to kill Superman and a bunch of other people. It's like I don't want this. I want the characters that I love, and so that's why coming to your books and what's going on across the DC line right now, I think I've been reading consistently since 03.
Oh god.
As a like, I had lapsed and then I came back in 03. But since I've been back, this is the most hyped I've been for so many books. Which is why my wallet is screaming at me like, control yourself.
Well, that's what's fun is like, I talk, a lot of the people that work there, we're just super nerdy. Like, I mean, Mark Waid, man, the depth of that guy had in comic books. One of my favorite, I remember just having this really out of body experience because, as you know, Hal uses a bunch of like obscure weapons to get out of, you know, wherever he is, Gamora or whatever it is. And
when the moment when he used Blue Devil's trident, I laughed out loud. I laughed so hard at that moment. He was so brilliant. He was so resourceful there.
I took my giant this right behind me. I had taken this giant who's who, and I just started flipping through, and I'm like, what weird weapons can I steal? And I made a big list, and I sent it to Mark. And what's so funny is it took me, I'm like going through who's who, you know, and I'm like, here are some of the weapons I think would be cool that Hal like steals or gets taken with him, you know. And he's like, yeah, that's great. Add these 5. And they were like, I had never heard them. I had like looked them up, and I'm like, the depth of knowledge he has is so deep.
Awesome.
That I was like, this is so cool. And I just had this moment like, you're emailing back and forth with Mark Waid about really bizarre superhero weapons. And like, is there 8-year-old Jeremy's like, you did it. You did it. You did it. Like, you're done. You did the thing, man. Like, you know, I always think about 8-year-old Jeremy. 8-year-old Jeremy is very happy right now. Like, you know,
like you had no, like now that since we're doing a temporary Mark Waid Love Fest.
Yeah.
When they first announced it, and like if anybody wants to show him this, because he probably doesn't watch our show, that's fine. But like when they announced him on World's Finest for the first time, like Batman and Superman are my 2 guys. Like, those are my like if I had to cancel if I had only 2 books that I could get, that was the one thing. So when they announced him, I'm like, all right, I'm done. I can stop everything and just read this as long as he's on it. Yeah. And now they're putting him on, you know, Batman and Robin Year One, Justice League, and I'm like, what like where am I?
I think Dan Mora's drawing them all.
Yeah, and I'm like, but that's funny because you said, you know, you want to keep Xermanico as long as you can.
Yeah.
Mark Waid's got Dan Mora, I don't know, locked in his house.
Totally. I mean, but why not? Like, you know, don't screw up a good thing.
Yeah, he's great. I mean,
but some of those guys, like being able to like even work with Jeff Johns, like I just he's the nicest guy. Like I kept thinking like he's not that nice, and it's just no, he's that nice. Like
I'm so happy that he's got his own thing going, but man, do I miss him at DC.
That's what I joked with. I said I'm on the Jeff Johns track. I did Flash. Now I'm at Green Lantern. Like you know, eventually I have to start my own company. That's like,
well, can you do it and stay with the DC characters too?
Yeah. No, listen. I mean, between Green Lantern and doing Flash Gordon for Mad Cave.
Yeah, well,
I've been going down the road of doing my own creator own just for the heck of it, because I have a lot of other ideas that no one wants to do.
It's funny because when I saw that you were doing Flash Gordon, which I still have to read, I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to. I have it, and I'm ready to read it soon. But when I saw you were doing that, I'm like, man, he's got something with the name Flash in there.
Yeah, we were joking about it. I need a Flash Thompson series from Marvel. Yeah, there you go. And I'll get like the EGOT of Flashes is how I feel like.
Oh man, yeah.
But like the Flash Gordon, what was cool, one of the things that was cool, so there was that controversy about Marvel doing like a QR code at the end.
Yeah.
I never heard about it. Like, oh, you want to see an epilogue, you do the QR code, it takes you to a place. Mad Cave, smartly, the free comic book day, issue 0, they put a QR code in the front of issue 1 so you can scan it and go right to issue 0 and just read it. And I was like, man, that's a cool way to do it.
That's a good idea, yeah.
I wouldn't even mind them doing like a QR code to do like a recap of what's going on. Something that you're just like, if I was an intern at DC, whoever you are, that's what you should be doing. Like, recap pages that we can just QR code into a book so people can go click, and get a recap.
Yeah.
That's it. You remember how that used to be the way that like you'd open up a book and it would have like a big blurb about what's going on?
Yeah, right? it's like a small paragraph. Okay, cool. Thumbs up. And I'm back. Because it's like sometimes there's so many other things, so many other books that it's like, okay, where am I in this particular story? And it's like it takes a second to be like, okay, here it is. Yeah. So, but that's a good idea.
Previously on, like that's all I need.
Yeah, it's like the X-Men cartoon.
Yeah, totally.
It's awesome.
So, sir, we just want to thank you for your time. We have enjoyed your work so much. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for discussing all of these questions with us and breaking it down. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Oh, please. It's been great. You guys have been such stalwart allies of Green Lantern, so I appreciate it.
You bet. Like I said, there, places like, the Lantern Cast, the blog of Oa, they're a much bigger podcast, but there's nobody as loud on the internet as me.
He's the loud one. I facilitate his loudness. I let him go.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
It's like I said, the book is great. Can't wait to read and see what's next. And if you ever want to come back when the second arc, in January or after January, when things kick up and when people can jump on officially, you're always welcome here. We can set that up at some point.
You.
But it was a blast. We enjoyed it, and we know that our viewers and listeners are going to enjoy it too.
I hope so.
Make sure share any social media that you like right now. Any contacts, whatever, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, just you can go to spacekicker.com, or you just go Space Kicker on X. I guess we're calling it X. I'm doing X because I want to do the chop.
The DX crop.
I'm bringing it back, like the chop. Oh yeah, I'm on X. Bam!
Boy.
That's probably where I'm more active.
The trouble we used to get in at school.
Oh, totally. 100%. It's like, what is this vulgar thing you're doing? It's wrestling. It's wrestling. It's not a big deal. If I was ever writing an X-Men title, I guarantee you it would be X-Men. I'd just be doing that to everybody.
Professor Xavier.
Yeah, totally.
That's funny. So definitely follow his socials and
thank you.
More importantly, buy the books, read the books.
Buy the book.
Yeah. And if you haven't read them yet, we promise you'll enjoy them. Trust us. In this case, trust us.
This trade's only $20. It's a great deal. $20 for the trade. Back in action, Green Lantern. This is actually what you're going to see on the screen. If you're looking at this on YouTube, this is what you're going to see. Back in action.
If you're not watching YouTube, well, just type it into Amazon or call your comic shop. They don't know what you're talking about. But thanks again, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Bye.
See you soon.